This is the most famous wall on Earth. It is also the largest grave. The Chinese call it the longest cemetery on Earth. Some say 1 million people died building it. Most were buried right where they fell, in the cold ground beside the stone. For 2,000 years, emperors fed their own people into this stone body by body. And after all of it, all the death, all the centuries, here is the part they leave out. The wall failed. It was beaten in a single afternoon, not by an army, by one man and an open gate. But to understand that betrayal, you have to go back to the beginning, to the emperor who started it all. His name was Qin Shi Huang, the first man to ever rule all of China. He crushed 7 warring kingdoms into a single empire, and then crowned himself a living god. He was brilliant, and he was afraid of everything. Raiders in the north, assassins in his own court, death itself. So he ordered the impossible, a barrier to seal off the entire top of his empire. Thousands of miles of earth and stone, linking together the walls that older kingdoms had already begun. To build something that size, he needed bodies, hundreds of thousands of them. And he did not ask for volunteers. They came in chains, convicted criminals, captured soldiers, and ordinary farmers, dragged from their families by force. A summons to the wall was a sentence many never came back from. Everyone knew it. And still, the soldiers came to the door. They worked through frozen winters and burning summers, hauling stone up slopes so steep that men fell to their deaths just carrying it. They died of exhaustion, of starvation, of cold and sickness, and the overseer's whip. The true number is lost to history. But by some accounts, it climbs far beyond 1 million. And there was no time to carry the dead home. So they were buried right there, in the frozen dirt, beside the very stone they died lifting. The wall and the graveyard became the same place. Out of all that suffering came a story the Chinese still tell, 2,000 years later. The story of a young woman named Meng Jiangnü. Her husband was taken to the wall just days after their wedding. Winter came, and no word came with it. So she sewed him a coat against the cold and set out. Hundreds of miles on foot through the snow to a wall she had never seen. When she finally reached the wall, she asked a worker where to find it. He would not look at her. Her husband had been dead for months, worked into the ground and buried somewhere beneath all that endless stone. She had carried winter coats to a grave she would never find. The legend says she wept at the wall for 3 days and 3 nights. And on the 3rd day, the wall could not bear her grief. It cracked open before her and gave up the bones it had been hiding. It never happened. But some truths are too heavy to carry without a ghost to carry them. And every single mile of this wonder was paid for in the dead. When the first emperor finally died, still terrified of death to the very end, his wall had already swallowed a fortune and an entire generation. And it still was not finished. Because the great wall you picture in your mind, the great stone dragon coiling over green mountains, the emperor who started it all, never laid eyes on it. That wall came more than 1,000 years later, built by the Ming dynasty, who feared the north just as much as he had, and who picked up the very same shovels. They built it higher, longer, and deadlier than anything before it. More walls, more watchtowers, more men fed into the mountains, century after century, until the dead were almost beyond counting. And yet the wall's worst betrayal had still not happened. It was coming, and it would come from one of their own. You have probably been told you can see this wall from space, with your naked eye. You cannot. That part is a myth. But the truth never needed exaggerating, because it leaves one darker question. After 2,000 years and all those lives, did the wall even work? For a long time, yes. It slowed the raiders. It bought the empire time. But a wall is only ever as strong as the men standing on top of it. And by the year 1644, those men were starving, unpaid, and afraid. An army from the north had reached the wall's mightiest fortress, a gate called Shanhaiguan, where the stone runs down into the sea. They could not break through it, but behind the wall, the empire was already dying. Rebels had taken the capital, and the last Ming emperor was dead. And the general who held that gate, Wu Sangui, his family seized, his emperor dead, his world in ruins, made a choice that would doom everything left of the Ming. He turned to the enemy waiting outside, and he opened the gate. One of the costliest undertakings in all of human history. 2,000 years of labor, perhaps more than 1 million lives. And in the end, the greatest wall ever built was never breached by force at all. It was opened from the inside by a single broken man, and it fell in an afternoon. The dynasty that built it was already finished. The emperors who ordered it are dust, and the very horsemen the wall was built to keep out went on to rule all of China for nearly 300 years. And the wall? It just stayed, silent, endless, still holding its dead. Today, millions of people walk along its restored stone, smiling, never feeling the weight beneath their feet. They are strolling across the longest grave on Earth. It was never really a monument to glory. It is a monument to a darker thing, to how much a ruler will spend when the lives he is spending are not his own. 1 million people were given no choice but to die for this wall. In the end, it fell because one man was given a choice and opened the gate. If this is the kind of history they never taught you, subscribe. There are other wonders of this world with bodies in their foundations, and other monuments that cost far more than anyone ever admits.